Hey, I'm Dave, and I'm trying this again. I just recorded something, and then I realized I wasn't recording. I didn't see the red light on, and good thing I checked, because I would have kept going and talked to myself for a while, so I just noticed that. Dave Lemieux here, talking about the brand new Dave's Picks Volume 19, which if you're watching this, you probably already know is from January 23rd, 1970 in Honolulu, Hawaii, our first ever Grateful Dead release from the great state of Hawaii. And we got lucky today because the weather has been really windy lately. It's been beautiful, but windy, really windy. So I haven't been able to do this. It's been wavy, crashing waves, and way too windy. Couldn't even hear anything. So it's got a little humming from some of the ships out there. There's been a couple of pods of orcas, of killer whales out here the last few days. I'm recording this on a Wednesday. There were pods out here on Friday, Saturday, I saw them Monday, didn't see them yesterday. So I'll keep an eye out, you can too. If you see killer whale, tell me. So January 23rd, 1970, a show that has been on my radar as a possible release literally since I started working for the Grateful Dead. I won't say as a possible release because I wasn't really doing much producing then, but when I started working for the Dead a little over 17 years ago, geez, God, I was young, and I was working alongside Dick, and Dick was doing the audio work. He was specifically doing the Dick's Picks. When I got there, he was working on Dick's Picks 13 and 14, and in February or March, I remember coming in the vault one morning and I heard this crazy version of Hard to Handle. And I was so used to the April 71 versions of Hard to Handle. You know, I was a deadhead. I am a deadhead, but I was a deadhead when I came in. But largely based, my listening was based on my tape collection, which I had some 70 that had some Hard to Handles. So I did know the kind of 1972 drummer arrangement of Hard to Handle, but I really knew the April 71 arrangement, specifically April 28th, 29th. But the other things, even in February, March, and April, versions of Hard to Handle, the one drummer arrangement that was really different. It was precision, it had that really crazy peak. Even think of the ones from Fallout from the Fill Zone, the one from 8671. It is a precision piece of work. So I come into the vault and I hear this chaos, in a good way. I mean, musical chaos, but it was tight. And I was like, what is this? And Dick said, oh, this is, and Dick had lived in Hawaii for a long time. And so he was, I think, really proud of it, that he was listening to some really excellent Grateful Dead from Hawaii. So we listened to the Hard to Handle, and then we listened to the rest of the show, and there was a great Good Lovin', and there was a great That's It for the other one. So I'm thinking, wow, what else could there be in the show? And then there was a Dark Star, and a St. Stephen, and a 35-minute version of Love Light. So I said, wow. And you know, this was the beginning of my very short but important musical education by Dick Latvala, because he would come in most mornings and play me something that I hadn't heard, whether it was an Academy of Music show from 1972 or this show. What else did he turn me on to? He turned me on to Wichita 72. He turned me on to 113080. So he turned me on to a lot of good music. I only worked with him for a few months, and then in August of '99, Dick passed. So we proceeded. We produced a lot of CDs over the years, and this show has always been one of these shows that I've gone to. If you listen to my radio show on Sirius, you've heard me play this show a few times. I've been doing that show for 9 years, but I have played it at least a couple times, 3-4 times on January 23rd. So it's always been on the radar, and so we've been doing, as you know, we've been doing a lot of kind of mid-70s, late 70s. We did the Spring 90 box sets. That was 16 or 15, 16 shows of, 14 shows of 1990 Grateful Dead, the Hampton box. So we've been doing a lot of stuff, but we haven't done really very much 1970. We did that show from about a week after this in St. Louis. As an earlier Dave's Picks, that was a combination with one of the December 69 things. But we really haven't done too much. And when you think of this era, now, I encourage you to go to Deadbase or Dead Lists or wherever you go to look at your Grateful Dead set list and look at the Dead schedule. Really, let's go back to November of 69, November, December of 69. Let's go right through to June of 70. And it's an insanely busy schedule. Just follow it along. And also follow geographically, because they were all over the country. In February, they're off to Texas, and in Cincinnati in April, and then the spring tour in at the end of April into May with Harper College. End of May, first trip to Europe. crazy schedule. And remember, when the Dead, if you notice a little gap in any of the Grateful Dead schedule at the time, they're generally recording Working Man's Dead. We're talking February, March, April of 70, which came out in June. And then they'd follow that up with recording in the summer of 70, recording American Beauty that would come out in the fall. Very busy year, and for the most part, excellent. Think of 213, 214, 70. Think of January 2nd and 3rd of 70 at the Phil Maurice that opened. 515, 70, Harper College, of course. Some of the best shows the Dead ever played, I think, are in the first half of 1970. Really, really exceptional stuff. So, Honolulu. They start a tour on January 10th in San Diego. They do the West Coast. They do Portland. They do places like that, the Corvallis. And then they end that tour, I think, around the 18th of January, and then they head to Hawaii for a couple of shows. They were peaking. Bear was still on the road with them. Remember, Bear didn't leave California much after around March or so, March, April. He wasn't ill. That's why things like Harper College weren't recorded by Bear, but then a month later at the Fillmore West in June of 70 they were. July of 70, of course, Bear went away for a couple of years. So that's kind of a little history of the recordings. Bear recorded this, so I want to get that out of the way because the sound quality is exceptional. So the show starts kind of typical of the era, some good mellow, good Grateful Dead, and almost immediately China Rider. Spectacular China Rider. And 70 is one of those years that is mostly really good, but sometimes it's really sloppy. There's really not a lot of in between. There's not a lot of sloppy stuff, but when it is, it's pretty sloppy. And I'm thinking of some of the stuff in June onward. It's kind of hit and miss. But earlier in the year, when they were on, they nailed it. And they could nail anything at any time. And in this case, China Rider, absolute perfection. Really one of my favorite China Riders from this era. And it's an era, remember, China Rider was brand new in '69. China Cat had been in the repertoire for a while. I Know Your Rider had been in the repertoire longer, but later in '69, they decided to join the two. And they were joined until '95 with a few exceptions, as we all know about. So you get this incredible China Rider, so tight that flows beautifully into Black Peter. Great Black Peter. Black Peter, another new song that would appear on Working Man's Day. We get quite a few of those here. We've got Black Peter. We got two versions on this release. I'll get to that in a minute, why we have two versions. We've got Dire Wolf, Cumberland Blues, Mason's Children, which didn't appear on Working Man's Dead, but it was a kind of a outtake that didn't get used and was released later on the So Many Roads box set that David Gannons, Blair Jackson, and Steve Silberman produced. So we get a good dose of Working Man's Dead on here, but we also get a dose of everything else. After that, you get this great Hard to Handle that I mentioned. A few more great songs. Terrific. That's it for the other one. Really good. The whole suite. Cryptical drums. Other one, back into Cryptical. The drums duet is great. Mickey and Billy are just locked in at this show. And that's really where it starts. I'm talking about the China Rider early in the show. And the way it's locked in is largely based around what the drums are doing, and then Jerry and the bass and TC. I've got to mention TC. These are TC's last shows as an official member of the Grateful Dead. He was present a week later in New Orleans when they got busted down on Bourbon Street, but I think these were the shows at which it was decided that TC would be leaving the band. And then from early February on, he was no longer a member of the Grateful Dead. So these are the very tail end of TC. He's very low key. He's definitely present, and he adds a lot to the shows. I'm thinking of the China. I'm thinking of the Dark Star, which we'll get to in a second. The Dark Star. Oh well, I'll talk about the Dark Star now. The Dark Star is a work of art here, and the reason I say that, as 1969 progressed, Dark Star kind of moved away from that kind of psychedelic chaos, using that word chaos again that we had with Hard to Handle, moved away from the psychedelic chaos of Live Dead and moved more towards the melodic stuff. And I'm thinking for that 21370. Think of that. Think of the Feelin' Groovy jam from that. And a lot of Dark Stars onward. And then you really think of Dark Stars right up and through 72 with some of like 4872 and 92172. And it's melodic Dark Star. Not to say it's not psychedelic and crazy and primal, but it also had this big melodic element. This is right on that cusp of both sides. So there's a moment in this Dark Star. It's about a 20-minute Dark Star, typical of the era. A moment, I think it's around the 15-minute mark, where they go into that very distinct Live Dead theme that they really hadn't been playing in the second half of 1969. When you hear it, you'll say, oh geez, that's the Live Dead kind of melodic sequence, even though it's not quite the melody of a Feelin' Groovy jam or something like that. but it's really unbelievable the way that they bridge that kind of psychedelic Grateful Dead of the Live Dead era with the melodic Grateful Dead and the songwriting Live Dead that would kind of more signify 1970 and 71 as they go into the Skull and Roses album with songs like Bertha and Warfred, and then Europe 72 with Brown Eyed Women, Ramble on Rose, and things like that, and then of course Working Man's and American Beauty. And just a real kind of switch in the Grateful Dead, and yet they never left behind the elements that had built them to that point, you know what I mean? So even though they became, you know, they had the acoustic sets in 1970, there were no acoustic sets in Hawaii, by the way, which is why we don't have an acoustic set on this. But what was my point? But they never leave anything behind. So yeah, they had this more acoustic singer-songwriting, vocal aspect from Working Man's Dead, and yet there was still a band that on any given night could play a Dark Star like this. Dark Star goes into a really powerful and precision St. Stephen, and instead of going to the 11, which by this time they'd kind of stopped playing it, they played it a little bit more but not too much, they'd moved away from the 11, and so the St. Stephen goes right into a big Turn On Your Love Light, one of those big rave up versions that just goes crazy, and that's how the show ends. So January 23rd, 70, a magnificent show from a magnificent era when the Grateful Dead were consistently playing great on a nightly basis. And there were some shows in December of 69 that, some hometown shows that were a little sloppy maybe, but fun and really good at times. This, by the time they hit the road with this January tour, they were on, I'd say, virtually every night. And I'm thinking January 10th through the 24th, the second night in Hawaii, and then the New Orleans shows, and then the St. Louis show, and then Family Dog was right at this time. They do a TV tape, and then they did 4 nights at the Fillmore West, then 3 at the Fillmore East with a night off in the middle on February 12th. And then they went home, and then they hit the road again and played Texas a week after that. It's just crazy, the schedule, but it was really good. So I mentioned something about January 24th, 70, the second night. We don't have the whole show in the vault, unfortunately, but what we do have is about an hour and a bit, about a CD worth of music. So January 23rd, 70, the complete show, which is our Dave's Picks Volume 19. It's the complete show from January 23rd, but it fits on 2 CDs, so the third disc is everything we have from January 24th, and it's spectacular. It's really good. There's another version of Good Lovin', Black Peter, so we got 2 of those. But the other highlights here are Mason's Children. In my opinion, probably the best version they ever played. I think they just nailed it absolutely perfectly at this show. And what else was there that was great? Feedback into We Bid You Good Night, which was presumably the missing reel that we don't have. Might have had Alligator Caution with this feedback. I don't know. We've looked everywhere. I've spent 17 years looking for this tape. It doesn't exist, or we don't have it at least. If it exists, we'd love to get it. But I don't know what they played. But because the night before they did the Dark Star, I'm guessing that it was an Alligator Caution thing, I don't know. And then so we got Feedback, and then an encore of Dancing in the Street. And it's a good Dancing in the Street. Think of Harper College, it's that arrangement, same era. Think of Fillmore East 2 weeks later. Whoa. Jeez, almost fell off a precipice into the water. That would have been dangerous. Oh, there's jellyfish down there. Oh, that's kind of cool. Sorry, there's a big pink jellyfish down there. Don't swim, they sting, I think. So we've got this January 24th thing. So it's everything we had in the vault. We wish we had the whole show. If we did, maybe there'd be more of it to put out, but we just don't. So that's the case where this is the perfect format to get that out to you. So that's going to wrap it up for our Dave's Picks Volume 19, which again I think is outstanding. January 23rd, 70, it's an era we haven't done much, and from the era, it's one of the best shows. Again, like I say, great, that's it for the other one, great Dark Star, Love Light, great smaller songs, Hard to Handle. There's a great King Bee, bit of a rarity, phenomenal King Bee by Pigpen on the third disc on the January 24th show, Dancing in the Street, Cumberland Blues, Dire Wolf, all sorts of great things from Working Man's Dead. So check it out. They do tend to sell out pretty quickly, so I would say that if you're interested in getting it, head over to DeadNet, and you might even be watching this on DeadNet. Order it now. Interloper. I think he was saying get Dave's Picks 19. That's a big glaucous seagull. They're big. The glaucous ones are huge. not eagle size, but they're big. So get it. It'll sell out pretty soon. They tend to within a week, sometimes within a day. So the sooner the better. It's a tight show. It's a terrific, fun listen. We're just wrapping up Dave's Picks Volume 20, which will come out in November, I think. I think you're going to love it. Been working on this one for a while, for a long time, the number 20. So, which is to say, we're fully confident that this is a great one and a great release, and we think you're going to like it. Thank you for listening and watching. Looks like nothing interesting happened behind me today, aside from a jellyfish floating around and a loud seagull. So have a great rest of your day, and again, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for bearing with me. Dave's Picks 19, January 23rd, 70, a little bit of January 24th in Honolulu, Hawaii. I think really good stuff. Thanks.